Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to this video lesson about the scientific revolution. This is part 2 of 2 video lessons about this topic. I'm Miss Jennifer Blank. I will be your guide on this journey. So hold on to your hats, and here we go. All right, effects. Let's talk about the effects of the scientific revolution. Now, before I embark on this, I want to again remind you that I have a previous lesson, a video lesson called the causes and effects of the scientific revolution that I would like you to take a look at before you watch this. So if you haven't watched it, stop, go back, watch that, then come back. Okay? All right. Okay, so effects overview. Now, this is more of a detailed description than what I provided in the video lesson. But you have, first off, the rise of what we call the scientific community, all right? This community of thinkers that is coming together and sharing information, okay? And each thinker is building, taking, applying, and then building upon the information of the others, okay? And that's what we call it, a community, because everyone is kind of working together. We have the development of the modern scientific method, okay? Our modern world would not be possible without that scientific method. Our greatest technological advancements, our greatest scientific achievements are all due to this method. Okay, without this method, the world that we see does not exist. Very important. I cannot begin to overemphasize that. A universe ordered according to natural laws. This is what people began to believe, as opposed to a world that was governed by mystical properties or spiritual entities. It is a universe ordered according to natural laws. Okay, this is a fundamental change from previous eras. These were laws discovered by human reason, not by divine intervention or divine inspiration. This is humanity. Humanity by itself, for itself, with itself, okay? We de-spiritualized and demystify the universe instead of thinking there's all these cosmic forces at play and we can't begin to know why or how these things happen. We are actively pursuing the how and the why, okay? So this is very important. We have a mechanical view of the universe. We want to take it apart and see how it works. We have a deistic view of God, this belief in deism. The idea down here, you see it says God is the cosmic capitalist, or you could view it as God is the watchmaker. Basically, God built the universe, right? Like somebody would build a watch, but you're not sitting there like pushing the hands of the watch that you wear, right? You're just watching it tick. Now, if it stops ticking, you look at it, you're like, oh, it needs a new battery. You take it into the mall, one of them little kiosks, right? And you take it in there in 20 minutes, you know, they replace the battery and your watch is clicking again, right? That's kind of the idea of deism. God got the whole ball rolling, but he just kind of lets it go. You know, he didn't mess with it unless it's like about to stop working or it stops working, and then he'll step in and a little tweak here, a little new battery there, and then let it take its course. Pardon me. We have skepticism and independent reasoning, which I did discuss in the causes and effects video lesson. We have challenges to religion, deep challenges to religion. I would argue much deeper than the challenges that the Protestant Reformation brought up. Those challenges were about interpretation of the Bible itself, but not a doubt in the Bible. These challenges to religion represent an actual doubt in God, doubt in the Bible, doubt in faith. All right, so this is much more fundamentally offensive to the church than the Protestant Reformation ever could have been. We have a redefinition. Well, before that, we have a decline in superstition, right? I mentioned that earlier. We have a redefinition of humanity's role in the universe, right? Humanity is an active player, not a passive thing that is being played, right? We are an active player determining our own destiny and the functioning of this universe. We begin to develop human control of the natural world, the fact that we can actually influence and impact how the natural world works, right? We also have challenges and changes to the roles of women. And this is going to continue into the Enlightenment era. All right, so let's talk about key concepts of the scientific revolution. And we're going to revisit some of the things we introduced in the last lesson with the key thinkers. All right, so inductive versus deductive reasoning. These are very important concepts, not just for the scientific revolution, but also for the Enlightenment, because once we get into a discussion of philosophy, this is going to be really, really important. All right, so inductive versus deductive. Deductive reasoning comes from Descartes, all right? Inductive reasoning comes from Bacon. Now, in deductive reasoning, the central goal or central concept is validity. Is it valid? Is it true? And according to deductive reasoning, it is impossible for a conclusion to be false if the premise is true. Okay, so if you will, think of like all people who are college educated are successful, right? Now, if that premise is true, all people who have college degrees are successful. And all teachers have college degrees. Therefore, all teachers are successful, right? So if the first idea is true, then the rest of it is true. But see, we know that not all teachers are successful, right? And even if they are successful, generally they're not successful all the time. So then we have to go back to the first premise and say, well, maybe not all people who graduate with college degrees are successful, right? It guarantees that a conclusion is true. If your first premise, your first idea from what everything else stems is true, it is then impossible for everything else to be false. Now, Bacon takes an entirely different view. He says essential, you have inference and observation, those things coming together, right? Inference, then observation, and that gets to a central concept or a principle, right? So conclusion is formed based on observation of similar circumstances, not on this all-encompassing true statement. All right, and these things are going to govern how the Enlightenment evolves. All right, so I want you to keep these in mind. It's also very important for this era. All right, natural philosophy, empiricism, and the scientific method. So what's the difference between all of these things? We want to understand things. Let's start with natural philosophy. What is it? Okay, it's the study of nature, its purpose, and how it functions, or how it functioned, right? That's natural philosophy. Today, this is what we call science, okay? Science is study of nature, its purpose, how it functions, right? Now, chemistry explores this in a specific way. Biology explores this in a specific way. But those things, study nature, its purpose, and how it functions. What aspect of that is what differentiates the disciplines from each other, right? Biology, chemistry, anatomy, molecular biology, whatever. Empiricism, however, is a theory. It's a theory of inductive reasoning. Inductive reasoning, all right? So this comes from Bacon. That calls for obtaining evidence from direct observation and experimentation. It is the opposite of deductive. Deductive reasoning calls for speculation, all right? You're sort of thinking your way through it. Whereas empiricism is not about thinking. It's about actively doing, right? You may have an idea about something, or you may think a thought, but in order for that thought to have any merit, you've got to experiment and observe, right? The scientific method encompasses aspects of both, all right? Truth comes after investigation, all right? Now, that's both Descartes and Bacon agree with that. Truth comes after investigation, but where Descartes does it through a thought process, through reason and rationale, Bacon does it through experimentation and observation, right? And it says that right here. Bacon, experimentation and observation lead to understanding. Practical technologies are important. Descartes, human reasoning leads to understanding. The search for provable knowledge is important. So both are necessary, but you need to understand the difference so you can use them appropriately. You know, if you apply Descartes' method to scientific learning and studies of the natural world, well, you might have some issues. But if you apply to government, well, or politics or philosophy, then you might have better luck. Whereas Bacon, that's not really practical for philosophy, the discipline of philosophy, for example, but it's extremely practical for the scientific or for science itself. All right, so let's talk about the Aristotelian view of the universe, aka also known as the geocentric view. Now, I'm sure you remember me mentioning this in the previous video lesson, and you're like, what on earth is the Aristotelian universe? Am I supposed to know that? Well, it'd be great if you did, but if you don't, I'm about to tell you about it, right? So it's derived from Ptolemy, Aristotle, and Plato, all right? This is roughly 4th century BC, okay, or BCE if we want to be politically correct, before Common Era as opposed to before Christ. Classical writings were Christianized, okay? Now components, and these things also became components of medieval cosmology. So you have to walk it back. So we're in the Middle Ages, right? And we're trying to understand things. It's a fundamentally Catholic view of things because the church is in control of everything. So Augustine of Hippo, one of the key church fathers, makes Plato acceptable to study, right? Because he writes about it in his church father writings. People are like, oh, well, maybe some of these ancient Greeks are okay to study. So he opens the door to study Plato, which opens the door for St. Thomas Aquinas in the Middle Ages to study Aristotle. All right, bringing these folks into the medieval scholastic tradition is what allows some of their views to be become part of or become components of medieval cosmology. pardon me. They also influence medieval physics. They influence the beliefs at the time of matter and form. Think Platonic theory of forms. And the earth is thought of as this living, protected sphere that has been put there by God purposefully and is also watched over and protected by God. Okay. Now, medieval theology and Aristotle talk about this. So late antiquity, like I just said, Augustine of Hippo revives Platonic thought. He incorporates pagan philosophy into Christian cosmology. This effectively makes Plato and Aristotle honorary Christians. Okay, that he effectively says that in his works, that Plato would have been a Christian if he was alive. When Jesus was here, he would have been a Christian. And this is what opens the door for a Christian doctrine to incorporate these pagan ideas. So during the medieval period, Aquinas revived Aristotelian thought, right? And he incorporated that pagan philosophy into Christian cosmology. These ideas then became church doctrine, and when challenged and represented a threat to the church. Okay, so when these things were causing problems for the church, if you can't beat him, join him. They found ways to incorporate these ideas into church doctrine to make people feel more comfortable about church doctrine and thus convert. We take for granted that Christianity, everybody just flocked to it, but if you actually study early church history, initially not so successful. Early Christians had a pretty rough go of it, and to make it palatable to the pagan masses, they had to make some modifications to church doctrine in order to get these people on board. Aristotle believed the following things. Earth was the center of the universe. I'm sorry, that's typo, center of the universe. We were surrounded by celestial bodies and a prime mover, which Aquinas interpreted to be God, kept the universe going. Aquinas says the earth is at the center, celestial bodies equal heaven, and the prime mover is God, of course. So this is how Aquinas transitioned Aristotle's viewpoint and made it part of Christian doctrine, okay? All right, now, for this long response essay. Now that we've talked a little bit about this, you've watched a couple of video lessons, I would like for you to create a thesis statement for this. If you want to write a full essay, that's fine. You can send it to me, and I'll take a look. But I want you to complete a thesis statement for this. I want you to time yourself 5 minutes to write a thesis statement. All right, and then I want you to critique yourself. I want you to look online on the AP College Board, right? Find the rubric. I've already given the rubric in class, but if you lost it or don't have it, you can go find it on there and look at the rubric for thesis statements. There are 2 points that you can get. And so after you complete a thesis statement to this, I want you to grade yourself, and then we're going to talk about it in class, see how you did. All right, analyze how Galileo, Descartes, and Newton altered traditional interpretations of nature and challenged traditional sources of knowledge. All right, come up with a thesis statement. I hope you learned what you needed to, and I'll see you next time.